Okay, I think let me just give a little bit of introduction about myself. Although Brother Richard has mentioned about my background, like I was Indonesian, I grew up in Indonesia. I came to Singapore about 16 years ago, 2002. So since then, I've been studying and working in Singapore. My profession now is a teacher, so I'm teaching in the secondary school. I'm teaching mathematics. Yeah, so in the mid of busy daily life, handling students, marking things, planning for school stuff, and so on. So I think I also find interest in pursuing my interest in the Dharma to continue learning about it. And what I'm going to share today is really about the reflection of my learning. Okay, the content may not be new to you. All right, but I think the reflection and how we make sense of things may be something that can offer you another perspective to understand certain things. All right. Why I asked about is there always hope in life? Because I think you notice that in the current situation of the world, right, a lot of things are happening. And I think quite often I heard many people say that there's no hope, there's no hope. Okay, so I think I intend to unpack a little bit more about what's the meaning of hope here, and then like, is it something that we can work on together? All right. By the way, today is a special day. Do you know what day is it? Sunday, yes. School holiday, starting of school holiday. But if you look at the calendar, what's the date today? 18 November 2018, right? So from mathematics teacher point of view, this is a very special number because in mathematics there is what we call the palindromic number. Okay, palindromic number is a number that when you read from the front and the back, it will read the same. So this is one of the special date, 18, 11, 18. Okay. Yeah, 18, 11, and 18, right? Yeah, so today is a special day. So I think on this special day, before I talk about hope and the Dharma, right, I want to ask you this question, all right? How do you feel now? Okay? I know there are quite a number of you here, maybe about 40, 50, or even 60 of you, right? So I think I can't get one by one to mention what it is. So I think what I can do is, you have your handphone, right? Okay, if you have your handphone, I invite you to go to this website, menti.com, yes. And then enter the code 95982. It's okay, take your time, take your time. So www.menti.com, then you enter the code 95982. No space. The software will automatically generate the code in such spacing, all right? But you don't need to enter the space. Okay, 95982. Then you should be able to see a question. Yeah, the question is just enter one word to describe your feeling today. Yeah, your feeling, not my feeling. If you can read my feeling, then I think I will invite Brother Vincent to give talk. I think if you're familiar with this Mentimeter, the larger the word actually represent the higher frequency, all right? You know, if I do this with my students after they come back from holiday, they're always like, responses like tired, and then like don't feel like going, and so on, okay? Wow, I think you can see that stress is quite a big word. I think majority of us experience stress at different levels. Okay, neutral, relaxed, sleepy, okay. There's a little bit on mathematical. Okay, but neutral and stress are quite big, right? Yes, which is interesting. Any more responses? Okay, so the highest is really neutral and stress. Okay. At least this is a good temperature check to see at what state of mind we are all in now. In case you are wondering, right, this is the recent report. Okay, Singapore ranked the 34th in the World Happiness Report 2018 about the most happiest country. Okay, so when they talk about the happiness index, so you notice that Singapore is not the top, right? So Singapore is actually the 34th, which is actually slightly lower rank this year, okay, compared to last year, because last year I think it was a little bit higher, but now I think dropped again. But if I look at the report in the past few years, right, for example, this one, I think in about year 2012 and 2013, they even released the report in the detailed breakdown, because like when you talk about happiness, there are different measures that they use for happiness, right? And I think like, for example, about positive emotion, and then about the stress level and so on. And I think in the year 2012, this is the report that we got on the internet. So when you look at the rank may not seem to be a big deal, because like all 34th or even like 36 like seems like it's quite okay compared to other countries. But actually, if they look at the breakdown of the items, right, they will see that in some items we are actually the most unhappiest in the world. Okay, like you can see that most unhappy, the least positive emotion, least optimistic, most emotionless. So I don't know whether when you say neutral just now was emotionless or not. I think no lah. I think our neutral can be like, okay, not too extreme in the different emotions. Okay? But interestingly, right, if you look at the quality of life in Singapore, because sometimes when we look at the stress level very high or unhappy, sometimes we ask question whether the quality of life over here is really that bad. Because bad quality of life will lead us into being unhappy, all right? But actually, if you look at the quality of life in Singapore, it's not bad, right? Yeah, look at the index in the region, right? Singapore is considered one of the highest in our region, okay? Like compared to Jakarta, Bangkok, and then the Vietnam, okay? So ours can even like double of the quality index in Phnom Penh, okay? And I think for me, from someone who came from other country to Singapore, right, I think I can be very honest that the first few years when I came to Singapore, I actually felt that Singapore is a heaven. Because like when I was in Indonesia, we have different issues, and then like there was racial tension and so on. But actually when I came to Singapore, suddenly all these problems are disappeared, okay? All these problems disappeared, and then like, but of course we have other problems, right? And do you want to give input? What are the causes of unhappiness in Singapore? You can go to the same page. Okay, let me go to the next one. Yeah. This time around, I give 3 entries maximum. Haze, do you still have haze? Yep, the cost of living, agreed. Stressful work, expectation, pressure. I think the biggest is the cost of living. I think it's really high. I think once you buy a property, you buy a house, it's like you owe debt for life. Yeah, cost of living, kiasu, competition. I think I agree. I think these are some of the problems in Singapore that make people stressed. So I think when I want to highlight the thing about when we learn the Dharma, right? Normally we interpret the Dharma because the Dharma words are the same for everyone. When the Buddha declared the Dharma is really for everyone, but depending on our experience, we may interpret things differently. So I think, for example, if I ask my friends who are now in Indonesia and then to read the same sutta text, so their interpretation may be a bit different compared to how we interpret it in Singapore. In fact, I also can confess, after living like 16 years in Singapore, every time I go back to Indonesia, I felt that, wow, I won't be able to survive anymore here. Because suddenly the traffic condition becomes so bad, right? And then like I can't handle the stress on the road. Like over here, everything is really smooth, but over there, traffic jam is everywhere. And then like over here, you walk, and then while carrying your handphone, you feel safe. But over there, when you walk and then you want to play Pokemon, wow, there are a lot of danger over there. Yeah. So because of that, right, I actually interested to see how different people, different experiences, and then go into the psychology of the person to interpret the cause of unhappiness everywhere. Okay, like for example, if you go to other countries, like this is one of the very famous report online about someone who documented the school children who don't take school bus. Okay, I think in Singapore you will see the narrative is a bit different. Like for example, now I'm sending my daughter to primary school next year. The narrative is really about, are we going to send our daughters by ourselves, or you want to take the school bus and so on. But I think when we talk about, okay, maybe school bus is good because like good experience, and then like for us also no need to travel so much. But at the same time also we start to think, oh, school bus, then if the school bus actually pick my daughter the earliest, then we'll be suffering for her because like the school start at 7:30, bus she was pick up at 6:30, then she has to wake up very early and so on. The narrative is very different compared to when you look at the pictures here. Okay, over there's no school bus. So children have to travel, and then not only travel, but also like travel in such condition to reach their school. Okay, I think, can you imagine if we are Singaporean parents and then our child has to go to school in such condition? Probably the first thing we do is change school. Yeah, don't go to school. I think I will try to see whether we can send you for homeschooling or something. Okay, so we have options, we have alternatives, but for them, they really have no alternatives. Okay, like I think the one on the left is the disaster area, the earthquake. So after the earthquake, I think ironically, the safe area is actually the school area. So they all have to evacuate. Okay, they all have to go to the different places, and after that they have to travel every day to school. Okay, but you notice that the thirst for knowledge, the thirst for the need for schooling is very high until they actually have to go to that extent and brave whatever challenges that they have to face to go to the school. Okay, and I think if we don't have this comparison, right, sometimes we think that our problem with the school bus and then like school bus pick up too early, or even like school bus sometimes late or break down is like a major thing. Because like I think the first time we heard about MRT breakdown in Singapore, right, I think I remember the reaction from the citizen was very strong. Like, well, how come it's like that, it's like that? But for us who are Indonesian, I think to us it's like, well, what's the big deal? Breakdown happen every day over there. Yeah, so suddenly certain problems become not so significant as compared to other big problem. Okay, and I think I want to lead you to another different extreme. Can you guess what this picture is about? The refugees, yes, the Syrian refugees. Last time when I wasn't so informed about the refugees before I started reading a lot about them, right? I thought that they are poor people. They are just poor people who don't have a place to stay, and then in the end they have to go and then like beg other countries' doors, right, to let them stay in. But actually, after I read about it, I realized it's not about poor people problem. A lot of them are really the middle class people, like maybe majority of us, but they are really forced to wipe out from their countries, and then they really have to go and live in the land of no land, basically, right? So basically, land of no land, meaning like they still live on the land, but don't know belong to who, and then like they are not welcome and so on. And I think like the U.S. policy, like the Donald Trump when they decided to make a very strict policy about the refugees, I think we can imagine that yes, maybe when you talk about the benefit of the country, there is certain advantages, but if you talk about the people who are suffering, the suffering is really a lot. Okay, so can you imagine that if we are one of them, I think if we put ourselves in their shoes, the experience that we feel will be totally different. Okay, probably if we are in that shoes already, right? Just now we talk about the grade, the high expectation in the school and the work. Probably if we are in that position, I think the PSLE is no longer a big deal to us. Okay, because like currently we see that PSLE is really a big deal, like all parents take leave and so on, just to help the child prepare for PSLE. But if you're in that situation, probably even you can get a school is good enough for you already. Okay, so I just show you one sentence from a sutta, right? About dukkha. Okay, you can see that the way we interpret the meaning of dukkha would be different if we live in a comfortable position and in a comfortable environment compared to people who live like just now, the school children who don't take the school bus, and for the refugees. Okay, like for example, for us, maybe if we think about it in our experience, right? Birth is dukkha, aging is dukkha. Yes, I think aging is dukkha, but I think in Singapore, there are a lot of alternative solutions. Anti-aging is everywhere. People just go for it and so on. Death is dukkha. Yes, I think we all agree. But what kind of death? Okay, I think death because of like just now the small boy who died in the shores, right? That photograph was really circulated quite widely. I think about 5 years ago. It's very different compared to the death that we experience, maybe like when our relative passed away because of the old age, right? Or for example, like death because of the tsunami that happens like 2 months ago, all right? It's very different from the death that we experience when one of our relatives passed away because of old age or sickness, okay? And then like when we talk about sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, all right? So all of them, yes, is a mental state. So all of them are dukkha. But you notice that the range of these mental states really vary from people to people, okay, from situation to situations. Association with someone that we don't like is dukkha, yes. But you notice that also there are different degrees. For us, maybe when we talk about the colleagues that we don't like, then we have to work together, then we feel what is suffering, okay? But I think if you look at the refugees, when they have to stay together, and then like sometimes with their enemy, or even like sometimes, I also heard a story last time about someone who was captured by a terrorist and then have to live together with them and so on. So it's the kind of dukkha that they experience is totally different from the kind of dukkha that we feel when we have to work with colleagues that we don't like, all right? And then like separation from the loved one is dukkha. Maybe for us, maybe separation, besides pass away, maybe like for example, last year when I have to go for a working trip, right, I need to leave my family for about 2 weeks. So that one is really dukkha, very painful. Oh, I couldn't meet my children and so on. But you notice that if you heard about, for example, the story of prisoner of war, maybe like the case, the Nazi case last time, right? So when someone was brought to the camp and then separated from their family, and then the father may be killed on the spot, and then the mother will be deployed to work for somewhere else, and then the children become the experiment for the medical and so on. So you notice that the kind of dukkha, because of separation, is really totally different at a different degree, okay? Not getting what we wanted is dukkha. Probably for us, maybe because like we expect the rise in salary, but in the end, we don't get it. It's already a dukkha and suffering for us. But actually, for other people, it's really a different story, right? Like, for example, they want to go to school, and then like there's no way to get there because of the earthquake and so on, and then there's no money. So, again, the kind of degree of the same mental state will differ from people to people, okay? But I think the Buddha said that the common denominator is all of them are really dukkha and then part of parcel of human life. Okay, I want to show you 2 case studies about some situation that I feel it went to the extreme, and then like sometimes we cannot even imagine what kind of hope that they have in life. Okay, how many of you know this guy, Luis Zamperini? Oh, no one. Okay, so he was actually an Italian-born American. Okay, so if you look at the lifespan from 17 to 2014, right? So you can imagine that he lived, yeah, correct, 97 years. And also like he lived in the era of the World War, right? Like in between 1939 when the World War started and then like 1942, the Second World War, then he was actually there. All right, so from the picture you notice that he became one of the military officer because of the World War, okay? His story is quite interesting. That's why he was his life story was filmed, become this movie, okay? The title is Unbroken. So this movie is actually one of the world bestseller movie. It was, I think, about 2 years ago. It was directed by Angelina Jolie. Okay, the story of him is quite inspiring to me when I watched the movie, because when he was born, right, in American, then he has to face a lot of racism because he was an Italian-born citizen there, and then he was bullied a lot by the classmates. So in the end, he grew up, become a naughty boy. Okay, so he was naughty, and then really like to fight back, and then he likes to steal something from the shop, because his family is also quite poor. Until one day, his brother actually saw that when he steals something and then he ran, actually he ran very fast. So the brother felt that I need to save him by channeling him into a good or positive activities, right? Because the brother saw that he can run very fast, so he actually suggested him to try to be the school runner. Okay, so join like the track and field kind of activity, right? And it is really true, you know, because of his talent and ability. So he really can run fast. In the end, he is one of the fastest runners in the school. In the end, he really made it to the Olympic in 1936. So he made it to the Olympic, and then he really, although he wasn't the first winner, but his story was really captured because on the last round, on the last lap, he really ran super fast until he really passed through the first runner. Yeah, so because of that, people found his action was inspiring. And then after that, he got a scholarship to go to the university and so on. But too bad, after that, World War broke, right? So he has to join the army, the military. And then, in short, he became a military officer. But the story that's really inspiring is in between, okay? Because there's one day when he was in one of the operation, he was one member of the operation, they actually suffer loss. Okay, so suffer loss. So he managed to survive. He managed to came back to the base. But after that, you have to wait for further instruction. What they're going to do. So after that, instruction was he has to be involved in the rescue mission to rescue whatever survivors that are around from the failed operation. And unfortunately for him, when he was rescuing, right, there's a mechanical problem in the aeroplane. So in the end, the aeroplane crashed to the sea. So I think out of 11 crews inside, there are only 3 of them who survived. So he was one of them, and then the other one is a pilot, and then the other one is one of his mate. All right, so the 3 of them. So they were floating in the sea for a long time. Can you guess roughly how long he was floated there? Because in the end he survived, right? 10 days? A month? It's actually 47 days. Yeah, 47 days floated in the sea. And there were a lot of psychological trauma during that period. Because can you imagine if you are stranded in the sea, like don't know when you can be rescued, right? At first, you may still find hope because you know that people will search for you. But what happened was after the 3rd day, right? The 3rd day, actually, there was one plane, the rescuing plane actually tried looking for them. But when they tried to give signal and so on, the plane didn't see it. So in the end, the plane aborted the operation because they not likely that they will survive. Yeah, and when they are floated in the sea also, right, can you imagine that they have to survive without food, without water? So in the end, they have to source for food. And the way they source for food is they try to catch the fish and then eat the fish raw, right? And then sometimes when there's a bird that go to their raft, right, they will actually kill the bird and then eat it and so on. So they have to think about think creatively about, you know, for example, use some of the meats as a bait to do another fishing and so on. So in the end, they survive because of that. And not only that, in between, there are also shark attacks. Yeah, shark attacks, so they have to survive the shark attacks. And then after that, also like, this happened during the World War, right? So when the enemies actually spotted there's something floating over there, then they will actually start shooting. So they have to manage by go underwater and then like hide under the raft, so that they are able to survive. One of his friends died, I think after about a month. Yeah, if you watch the movie, then you can actually empathize the psychological trauma that they really experience, because they even have to think about, like how to divert their attention from this stress, right? So they start to talk about the story, they start to talk about what they like to eat and so on, but they know that they can't eat it. So, but in the end, I don't know whether it is fortunate or unfortunate for him, because in the end, they managed to land in one island. But when they land in that island, they were captured immediately by the Japanese. Yeah, so I think in the movie you notice their reaction when they saw the Japanese came over them, because they know that once you become the prisoner of war of Japanese, that's really the worst that can happen, because Japanese is the cruelest. Their prisoner of war is really treated the cruelest, right? And that's what happened. So he was brought to Japan and then like changed camp a few times. And there was one special camp that he will remember for life, because he stayed in that camp for the longest. And then in that camp, it was chaired by this guy. Okay, you notice the second picture. There's a guy there, right? So he was constantly beaten and so on. The guy is really psychotic, because the guy really liked to beat the prisoners, okay, to mock and beat the prisoners. And the guy's name is the Musuhiro Watanabe. Okay, the picture on the left, okay, acted by a young Korean star, right? That one is actually the character in the movie, okay? But the other two pictures is the real pictures of the person. Yeah. The person is really cruel until after the World War ended. US actually declared a decree, right? And then they also come up with the list of the most wanted, the war crimes. And actually this general is actually one of them, is one of the top. But he managed to smuggle away, right? He managed to live in different place, and then after that, like change his identity and so on. So in the end, he was safe. Okay, but of course, in the era of internet, in the year 2000 and so on, of course, people can trace him back again. But at that time, the problem has been resolved, right? The problem has been over. Okay, so that guy actually worked as, I think if I'm not wrong, as an accountant in the bank or something. So actually, he did business and so on. But during the wartime, he really tortured the prisoners. Okay, until there was one day that when the general was promoted, so-called, and then like he was moved to a different camp. At first, Zamperini was very happy because like finally the torture was over, right? But in the end, he was shifted to the new camp, and then when he went to the new camp, he found it in horror that the same guy was actually the chair of the camp again. Yeah, and interestingly, right, in the movie it was shown, in between he felt humiliated, he felt like there's no hope, and then like he felt that he was really angry with the general, he wanted to beat him up, but his fellow campmates actually told him, this is not the way to beat him up, because if you beat him up now, you will be killed, right? But the way to beat him up is show him that you can survive until the end of the war, and then that's really your victory. Okay, so you notice that the kind of purpose of life has really changed, shifted from person to person. At that point in time, he can no longer think about he himself being an Olympic runner. In fact, there was one episode in the camp that he was humiliated because he was malnourished and then become very skinny, very sick, and then he was asked to run competing with the Japanese runner. Of course, he was humiliated because like he couldn't win, right? But he was made a toy because of that, basically, right? And there was one episode here. Okay, this one is one of the clip from the movie. I think I will let you see. This is the part when the general kept torturing him until one day the general also really want to find excuse to kill him. Okay, and this is the time when the general want to kill him. So he was asked to perform some ridiculous move. Basically, he was asked to hold this heavy block, right? And then he was told, if you drop the block, then you will be killed straight away, okay? And he was in the condition that he was very weak, and then he was already injured his leg and so on. Okay, I think I can let you watch here. Oops. Does it play?
If he drops it, shoot it. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. 見るな。見るな。見るな。Don't look at me.
So you notice he was beaten badly, but at least he didn't die because of being shot, right? Because I think he was really in the state of doing A or B, okay? A is being shot straight away if he give up. And then like B is really when he perseveres, so in the end he win because the general couldn't stand to see his spirit. And I think if you notice that just now there's a flashback about when he ran and so on, because I think when he managed to pass through the first runner during the Olympic, also like he felt that he needs to exercise his best effort in that lap. Okay, and I think in his biography, right, he also mentioned that he made it this far and refused to give up because all my life I had always finished the race. So he saw this as a race and he has to finish it. So in the end, he survived. This was him during Winter Olympic 1998. Okay, so that's the time when the Olympic was held in Japan again, and happened that the Olympic, one of the Olympic stadium is really near his previous camp. So that one was really, to me, is part of his healing as well. Okay, because to be frank, after he was freed from the camp, right, his life didn't get any good for him because he was freed, but in the end he started to feel loss of purpose and so on, and then he always being haunted by the nightmares when he was in the camp. So in the end, like, he also went into drugs and drinking. Yeah, because I think he tried to get rid of the problem, and it was really psychological torture for him, even if the physical torture is no longer there, right? But in the end, he managed to slowly pick up. He's a Christian. In fact, like after that, his story became inspiring because he always give talk in the churches and so on to share about his story and then how he managed to pull up the strength to get over it. And I think the most inspiring story is actually that year, because that year people know that, you know, the Olympic is done in Japan. So he was invited to be the runner to light up the fire, right? So it was actually a very honorary position for him. And at the same time, he was actually used that chance to try to locate where was the general. Yeah, and it's not to revenge, but he said that he wants to tell the general that I've forgiven him. Because he said that he managed to get rid of his mental trauma, because in the end, when he has forgiven him, then he managed to let go all the grudges and then all the source of unhappiness that he felt. Okay, so he wanted to see the general. By the way, the general was still alive. That's why the media tried to look for him and so on. But unfortunately, the general refused to see him. Yeah, so in the end, what he did was he wrote a letter because he said that, okay, I'm fine that the general refused to see me, but I still want to let him know that I've forgiven him so he doesn't have to have a regret in life. Because he also felt that he can think about in his general point of view, right? He felt that for someone who has tortured a lot of prisoners so much, then probably in the later life he may regret and so on. So he wants to assure him that you should let go as well and don't need to have a lot of regret and so on. Okay, so this is like one of his words to talk about the hardest thing in life is actually to forgive, because he realized that all his problem actually was resolved after he managed to forgive him. Okay, and I think probably we have time. I will show you one more case study, also about this time around. It's a prisoner of war. This is about someone who was sent to the Nazi camp. All right, and then one of the worst camp is actually the Auschwitz camp. Okay, her story is also very well known. Story from Eva Mozes Kor. All right, so I will play the video. Then from these two narratives, we can discuss further about hope.
In 1934, one of a pair of twins, Miriam and I were the third and fourth children in the family. We lived in a very small village in Transylvania, Romania. We got down from the cattle car. People were selected to live or to die. People crying, pushing, shoving, dogs barking, trying to make some sense of that place. And I actually turned around in trying to figure out what is that place. Never seen a place like that before. And as I turned around, I realized that my father and my two older sisters were gone. Never saw them again. We were holding on to mother for dear life. A Nazi was running in the middle of that selection platform, yelling in German, "Twins, twins." He noticed us and demanded to know if we were twins. And my mother asked, "Is that good?" And the Nazi said, "Yes." My mother said yes. At that moment, another Nazi came, pulled my mother to the right, we were pulled to the left, we were crying, she was crying. And all I ever remember is seeing my mother's arms stretched out in despair as she was pulled away. I never even said goodbye to her, but I did not understand that this would be the last time that we would see her. And all that took 30 minutes from the time we got down from the cattle car and my whole family was gone. Only Miriam and I were left holding hands and crying. We were Mangala twins, which we found out later on what that meant. Mangala would count us every morning, and he wanted to know how many guinea pigs he had this day. I was used in 2 types of experiments. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they would put me naked in a room with my twin sister and many other twins up to 8 hours a day. They would measure every part of my body, compare it to my twin sister, and then compare it to chart. On alternate days, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, they would take us to a blood lab. They would tie both of my arms to restrict the blood flow, take a lot of blood from my left arm, and give me a minimum of 5 injections in the right arm. The content of those injections we didn't know then, nor do we know today. After one of those injections, I became very ill with a very high fever. My legs and arms were swollen and very painful. I was trembling as the August sun was burning my skin, and I had huge red spots covering my body. The next visit to the blood lab, they didn't tie my arms. Instead of that, measure my fever. And I was immediately taken to the hospital. The hospital was another barrack, but it was filled with people who looked to me more dead than alive. Next morning, Mangala came in with 4 other doctors, never ever examined me. He looked at my fever chart, and then he declared, "Too bad, she's so young. She has only 2 weeks to live." For the following 2 weeks, I have only one clear memory: crawling on the barrack floor because I no longer could walk, and crawling to reach a faucet with water at the other end of the barrack. And as I was crawling, I would fade out in and out of consciousness, telling myself, I must survive, I must survive. After 2 weeks, my fever broke, and I felt immediately a lot stronger. It took me another 3 weeks before my fever chart showed normal. Miriam, when I got back, she was sitting on the bed, staring into space. When I asked her what happened to you, she said, I cannot talk about it, I will not talk about it, and we didn't talk about Auschwitz until 1985. When I asked her in 85, Miriam, do you remember? When I was taken to the hospital, she said yes. I said, what happened to you while I was in the hospital? She said, I was under Nazi doctor supervision 24 hours a day. It was the same 2 weeks that Mangala said I would die. So I said to them, what happened to you after the 2 weeks were up? She said she was taken back to the labs, injected with many injections that made her feel very sick. As we found out years later, when she grew up, got married in Israel, expected her first child, she developed severe kidney infections that did not respond to any antibiotic. Second pregnancy in '63, the infection got so bad that the Israeli doctors studied her, and they found out that Miriam's kidneys never grew larger than the size of a 10-year-old child. So I begged Miriam that not to have any more children, because every pregnancy was a life crisis. But she had a third child, and after the third child was born, her kidneys started to deteriorate, and by 1987 they failed, at which time I donated my left kidney. I had 2 kidneys and 1 sister, so it was an easy choice. But a year later, she developed cancerous polyps in the bladder. The doctors kept asking me to find our Auschwitz files. We never found our files. We never found out what was injected into our bodies. Miriam died June 6, 1993. Months after Miriam died, I received a telephone call from a professor at Boston who said he heard me speak and he would like me to go to Boston and speak. And when I came there, it would be nice if I could bring a Nazi doctor. I was stunned at such a question, and when I thought about it, I remembered that the last project that Miriam and I worked together before she died was 1992, and was a documentary done by a German television about the Mengele twins. And in that documentary, there was a Nazi doctor from Auschwitz. And I figured if he was alive in 92, he might be alive in 93. So I got his telephone number, I called him and invited him to Boston. But he told me he was not willing to go to Boston, but he was willing to meet with me at his house in Germany. And I didn't plan to ask him any of these questions. Suddenly, I am asking him, you were in Auschwitz. Did you ever walk by a gas chamber? Did you ever go inside the gas chamber? Do you know how the gas chamber operated? And he said, He said, this is the nightmare that I live with every single day of my life, and went on describing the operation of the gas chamber. He was stationed outside, looking through a peephole, while the gas was coming down and people were dying. When everybody was dead and nobody moved, he knew that they were dead, and he signed 1 death certificate. No names, just the number of people that were murdered. And I asked him to go with me to Auschwitz in 1995, when we would observe 50 years to the liberation of the camp. Because I wanted him to sign a document, just what he told me, but I wanted it signed at the ruins of the gas chamber in Auschwitz. And he agreed immediately. I will have an original document signed by a Nazi. And if I ever met a revisionist who said the Holocaust didn't happen, I could take that document and shove it in their face. I wanted to thank this Nazi doctor for his willingness to document the gas chamber operation. I didn't know how to thank a Nazi. I didn't tell anybody about it because even to me it sounded strange. I didn't want anybody to change my mind. After 10 months, one morning I woke up and the following simple idea popped into my head. How about a letter of forgiveness from me to Dr. Munch? I knew immediately that he would like it, and that was a meaningful gift. An Auschwitz survivor gives him a letter of forgiveness to a Nazi doctor. But what I discovered for myself was life-changing. I discovered that I had the power to forgive. No one could give me that power. No one could take it away. It was all mine to use in any way I wished. And that became an interesting thing, because as a victim of almost 50 years, I never thought that I had any power over my life. Now, I began writing a letter, and I didn't know how to write a letter of forgiveness. And it took me 4 months to write it. And then I thought somebody might read it, and my diction in English is good, my spelling is not. So I wanted my former English professor to correct my spelling. So I called her. We met 3 times, and third time she said to me, "Now, Eva, very nice. You forgive this Dr. Munch. Your problem is not with Dr. Munch. Your problem is with Dr. Mengele." I was not quite ready to forgive Mengele. She said to me, "Okay, I have been meeting with you, correcting your letters. Now I want you to do me a favor. When you go home tonight, pretend that Mengele is in the room and you are telling him that you forgive him. Because I want to find out how would it make you feel if you could do that." Interesting idea, I thought. And when I got home, actually, I did something else. I picked up a dictionary and wrote down 20 nasty words, which I read clear and loud to that make-believe Mengele in the room. And at the end, I said, "In spite of all that, I forgive you." Made me feel very good that I, the little guinea pig of 50 years, even had the power over the angel of death of Auschwitz. So that is the way we arrived in Auschwitz. Dr. Munch came with his son, daughter, and granddaughter. I took my son and my daughter. I read my Declaration of Amnesty, which is a very good little document. And I signed it. Dr. Munch signed his document. I felt free, free from Auschwitz, free from Mengele. So now that I have forgiven him, I knew that most of the survivors denounced me, and they denounce me today also. But what is my forgiveness? I like it. It is an act of self-healing, self-liberation, self-empowerment. All victims, all hurt, feel hopeless, feel helpless, feel powerless. I want everybody to remember that we cannot change what happened. That is the tragic part. But we can change how we relate to it.
Okay, I know the movie was quite long. Actually, she also delivered speech you can find in YouTube. All right, it's about 1 hour speech when she shared about the experience in a more detail, and you'll notice that actually a lot of inspiration really come from the real example of how she deal with dukkha, right? And then the dukkha is really something that is not maybe we can never imagine, because it's really something that is totally different experience. Just to do a quick check before maybe we close, can you just talk to the person next to you, right? If you look at the 24 character strengths here, what do they have in common that enable them to overcome their challenges and barrier? You can talk to the person next to you. There are 24 character strengths here. If you go through each of them, right, what are the few things that help them to overcome their challenges? Courage. Yes, the courage, yes. Kindness, yes. Instead of hatred, right? Honesty. Hope, yes. Interestingly, you may not see spirituality, right? But I believe in some way it is connected, because like for Zamperini, actually, during one of his despair moments, he mentioned, I think if he actually said, God, if you let me survive this time around, so later on, if I can come back and then like serve you forever, something like that. So I think there's something that boosts the hope and so on. By the way, this character strength is actually quite good. In our school, we get all the staff and students to do it, so to help them get to know about their strength, right? And after that, like how they can use their strength in overcoming whatever challenges that they face in life. And this is a free survey, so if you go to this website, right, the viacharacter.org, then you'll be able to take the free survey, okay? When I look at my result, right, the result will show like that. So they will show you what are your few top strengths. So when I look at my top strengths, they mentioned that the hope and spirituality is the first two. My colleagues commented that it was quite so-called, it's not that common, you see, to see that, you know, the hope and spirituality can come hand in hand as the top strength. But I think when I start to think about it, I reflect deeper, I realized that maybe my sense of hope actually really come from spirituality, from the Dharma. Okay, because a lot of learning from the Dharma and so on actually helped me to boost hope in terms of the way I see life, the way I see problem, and so on, right? Because I start to dig deeper, right? Where is hope in the Buddha's teaching? Because I don't think there's a sutta that mentioned about hope specifically, okay? But I realized actually hope is a message that the Buddha gives us in whatever he does, whatever he did, and then in whatever he convey in his teaching as well. Because I think after I look through some case study like that, right, I also can imagine what kind of a person that the Buddha was. Okay, because sometimes it is not so helpful to think of the Buddha as a perfect being all the time, okay? But once we think of him as a Manusa Buddha, right, as a human, as a Buddha in the human form, you will see that he also faced challenges. Okay, like I think during his old age, he has challenges with his physical body. And then like when he wanted to start his teaching, a lot of so-called contra actions from different sections of the society. Even I think if the Buddha didn't get the support from the king, right, he wouldn't be able to really establish the Dharma institution, so-called, for the people over there. All right, so a lot of institution and then a lot of politics involved and so on. But you notice that the Buddha was a very optimistic person. Okay, like if you recall in the sutta, right, when the Buddha just got enlightened and then he started to wonder, right, the knowledge that he penetrated was so deep, so he was actually not so sure if he has to teach the Dharma. Would it be useful or would it go to the waste? Because like he felt that not many people will understand it. But you notice that after Brahma Sambhati requested for him to teach the Dharma, he became like very hopeful and then like really go all out in teaching the Dharma. All right. And also I feel that sometimes hope can also come when we have a better perspective in life, when we look at our life continuity model, okay? In most cases, when we just look at life like from eternity to eternity, right? Like we are born and then like after that, after we die, then we just go to either heaven or hell, or even like doesn't go anywhere. Like life stopped there and then go to eternity, right? We may felt that there is no hope in doing something, okay? Like for example, like I heard a case recently when someone go bankrupt and then like he wouldn't take care of the family and so on. So in the end, he committed suicide. So I realized that I think sometimes people do that action and then felt that there's no hope because of the view of the life continuity. Like maybe after I kill myself now, then the problem is over. But actually it's not, because as we all know that if we subscribe to the cyclical concept of existence, right, we will be reborn and reborn again. All right. But the problem is, even if we just go by reborn and reborn again, so what kind of happiness that we are chasing now? Okay, because yes, we can escape from this life, but in the next life, we chase for another happiness, but is there an end to it? And I think this is the problem that the Buddha tried to address, right? Because like after being reborn, then what? Okay, because like things continue, and things continue. Only until the Buddha discovered the Dharma, right? And then he realized that actually in the Four Noble Truths, there's a hope to end all this cycle, okay? And I think the message of hope here is really seen in the third noble truth here, because the first noble truth is about the truth of suffering, right? But the second one is about the truth of origin, and the third one is really the truth of ending of suffering, that all suffering can be ended, all right? And I think this is really the hope that exists in the message of the Dharma here, that, you know, no matter what situation that we have now, and then like if we are reborn again and so on. But at the end of it, there's a hope, okay? There's a hope that we are able to attain the ultimate happiness, to end the suffering. Okay, that's why in the model, after the Buddha explained the Dharma, right, you notice that there's the third suffering that the Buddha mentioned as the highest happiness, the Paramatta Sukha here, the ultimate happiness, which is Nibbana. So when you're no longer reborn, you are free from the cycle of the existence, and then that's the end of the journey, so-called. Okay. I quote this one from Dr. Brian Weiss, right? I think he mentioned that when someone is reborn again and again, right, because he felt that there's some lessons that the person needs to learn. So I think this also resonates well with the story of the Buddha, right? Before he became a Buddha, right? And then in his journey as a bodhisattva, then you know that he perfected his qualities until in the end he managed to become the Buddha, all right? So I think it's the same thing as us. One example is there was once I had a student who struggled, right? Who struggled in the academics, and then like towards the end, like very near to the exam, 1 month before exam, the students told me that I want to give up because he said that I don't think I'm able to do anything in the 1 month. I don't think I'm able to catch up, and then like I want to give up. So and then if I have to repeat, just repeat. But the next thing that I told her is, yes, it's good that you acknowledge your situation now. And then like, it's also good that you mentioned that you have mental readiness, that you have to repeat. But I told her, if you want to repeat, where you want to start? Do you want to start at 0 or you want to start at 3 or 4, which is nearer to the passing at 2-6, right? So I think I realized that conversation actually changed her view a little bit, right? Because instead of giving up, so I told her, why don't you just try your best in the next 1 month? So even if it is in the end, you have to repeat, just be it because you are ready, right? But when you repeat, you will not start from 0, and it is better for you when you start in your next, so-called next cycle. So I think this kind of, to me, I feel that this is the kind of attitude that we must also have in life. So even if we feel that we are not doing so well in this life, right? So we still have to do our best. And you notice that this all becomes something that, that will be useful in our future life. All right? Nothing is wasted, okay? And yeah, and I think you'll know that as long as we go by the Eightfold Path, then it is really the way that led us to the no-rebirth. Okay, so I think that's all my sharing for today. Okay, I think, sorry it took quite a lot of time here, but I hope that my sharing can give you some takeaway, all right? If you are free, maybe can I just ask 1 minute for you to write your short sentence about your main takeaway? Oops. Okay. You go to menti.com again and then just key in the code 742143, all right? So this is a different code from just now. 742143. Yeah, 742143. Okay, then you'll be able to see our other Dharma brothers and sisters' reflection here as well. Because I think sometimes when we have a Dharma talk, we don't know whether how people learn, and then like whether we can also learn from one another. Okay, so I think probably this could be one good way. Because when we share what we've learned, then we realize that there are different ways of us making sense of the content. I think the Siri asked me to stop. Okay, anyway, thank you so much. I think before I close, I just want to dedicate the talk to my friend as well, who just passed away a few days ago. Also, the story of my friend actually also a story of hope, because my friend is, passed away after she fought for cancer for 1 year. She was discovered to have cancer when she was pregnant. Okay, so it was a very difficult situation because it was a few months pregnancy, and then like she couldn't go for any treatment, any chemotherapy, because it will affect the baby, right? So I think the decision was either you have to abort the baby and then go for chemotherapy, or you have to, you know, bear with it and then get the baby born and so on. And after that, you go for treatment. So in the end, after a lot of discussion with her husband, so they decided to just keep the baby and then like continue to get the baby to be born first. But after the baby was born, she was actually in a very weak state of the body already. I think she was really weak until she couldn't even get any treatment at all. It was a very tough period for them, because the focus at that point in time was really to get the body regain some strength first before she can go for chemotherapy. Luckily, after a few months, then things went well. So in the end, she managed to get the chemotherapy. After that, things seems to be get well. I think her condition was improved and so on. But I heard like 2 months ago, then suddenly the cancer cell spread again. And I think in the end, she has tried her best but lost the battle. Yeah, so I think at this point in time, I also want to dedicate the merits that accumulated from today's sessions to her well-being. So may she be reborn in a good state. And today is her cremation, all right? So may she be well and happy, and she will find a good life continuity wherever she is. Okay. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Brothers and sisters, it's time for question and answer. You can ask any question or comment for Brother Luis. Anyone? Don't have? Okay. All right, thank you very much for Brother Luis for such interactive and insightful Dharma sharing today. Let us rejoice in the Dharma gift by saying 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu.